Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Diego's so excited. He's like, is your next one going to drop today? I said, yes. He's like, I can't wait.
For real?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I said, he goes, is this one about, I said, no, this one is about getting started with barbells. I said, we're like 2 weeks behind. He's like, oh, how long do I have to wait till Jay's episode? I said, you got to wait 2 weeks to Jay's episode. He said, me and the other person who downloaded it. I said, hey, we have 50 downloads.
Yeah, I don't know who are these people.
One of them is my mother. Except as I said, I said, hey, Mom, have you listened to our podcast? She goes, I started it. It's like you started it. Well, you started it and you got bored, so you decided to stop listening to me talk.
You mean I don't get to repeat myself? Because I have a lot of fun repeating myself.
I know. Believe me, I know, because I said Diego yesterday. I said, hey, did I tell you Kelly told me she was so excited to train she couldn't concentrate on work? He goes, yes. He told me that like 4 hours ago. I was like, really? Are you sure? Yes. Well, I'm going to tell you again. Kelly's really happy. She's really excited to train. So we have a special guest today. We have got Jay Mund, who is 5x3's ninja SSC, as we call him, Jay Mund the ninja. Jay's shaking his head like, thanks a lot. And
yeah, you might need to explain that.
It's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Jay.
Woo, happy birthday, Jay.
We're trying to think about how old you were. You don't have to say, but I think it's pretty cool. We're trying to remember how old you are.
42.
42. Diego thought you were 42.
Jay, you're a baby.
42. 42 today. So we have Jay here. And we'd like to start off just with a little bit of background about yourself, Jay. If you could talk to us about, where you're from originally. I think you're from Baltimore. I think that's correct. And just how you got involved with, before you got involved with coaching, just a little bit about your athletic background and what led you to where you are today with your work at Kennedy and then also coaching.
Okay. Yeah. So born in Baltimore, grew up in Towson. Lived in Catonsville for the first few years. Mom and dad are both from Baltimore. Yeah. Mom grew up in Catonsville. Dad, they lived in Arbutus first, and then they moved to, I guess, Towson. Growing up, I was always like little,
Yeah. And
that was like probably what got me into lifting weights was, I didn't like being, I wanted to like compensate for not being tall, as like, like much as I could. And at first I was like really into, running. That was like my first sport. Cause it's,
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah. So that was sort of how I got into like, being physical. Cause.
So what age is that?
Like 14. So I ran cross country. We didn't have a track team, but I ran cross country the first time as a sophomore. And I don't know if I won any races, but I came in like second or third a bunch of times, so I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm like not terrible at this, and then that same year I wrestled. And I played lacrosse for the first time. I just like, I was terrible at that, but I was in shape, and that, that was, and I was, whatever. It was fun to be on the team,
Right.
But like, at an independent school in Maryland, if you haven't been playing lacrosse since you were like 5, you're behind,
True.
So it was fun to be on the team, but like, I was on the third string, like the third team of the JV team, midfield.
Right.
And the coach would call us the bomb squad. So like if things were really terrible, then you could go in. If things are like so bad that there was like not a chance that we could win, he'd be like, get in there. Bomb squad, get in there. You know, do your worst. But yeah, I mean, because like some of those guys went on to play, you know, full scholarships at like, you know, Virginia, Maryland, Hopkins, you know, the best lacrosse schools.
Yeah.
Who was the guy from Maryland who played lacrosse? Oh my goodness, he finally moved out to Colorado. His wife, Gary Gate.
Oh
right?
yeah, he was before me, but like, so my friend Maddie, one of her older brothers, I guess, was involved with professional indoor lacrosse, box lacrosse, I think they called it. And the Gate brothers were over her house a lot.
Yeah. So Gary Gate, his wife, she was a dancer, Nicole, and she opened up a dance studio out in Timonium before they moved to Colorado.
Oh, that's what it was. It was her older sister was married to one of the Gates.
And
yeah.
So Gary Gate, remember lacrosse being, it's true. It's like with any sport, and dance included. I mean, if you haven't been doing it since you were, in kindergarten.
Yeah. So the low skill sport, like running, I was good at.
How long did you wrestle for? How long did you wrestle for?
I wrestled for 2 years. So I wrestled as a sophomore, and actually had to stop like halfway through the year because my grades weren't good and my parents were, like, you can't be doing this for whatever. And then I did it again as a senior. And for having as little experience as I had, I was okay. I had a winning record as a senior, which was fun. But yeah, I wasn't like amazing at that, but I like never having done it, I was good enough to go scrap with a good wrestler and just not get pinned. That was a success. As a sophomore. And then as a senior, I finally was like, oh, I figured out how to win, which
so
was cool.
Like with any of those sports, I guess I'm thinking wrestling in particular, was there weight training involved in what you did as a regular? Yeah. I had
the same coach for lacrosse and wrestling, and he he got us in the weight room and had us
was it a regular thing, or because we were talking about this with me with cross country, it was like if it rained.
Yeah, it was that kind of thing. But it was, I mean, he gave us an idea of what would work, but it was the kind of thing where you really needed to do it on your own if you were going to get good at it. And I was like, as a sophomore, I was actually underweight for the lowest weight class. As a sophomore said, when I first started doing it, that was how I got recruited. Like the captain of the team saw me like working out one time and was like, you should wrestle. You could win just by showing up because the other people will forfeit or not make weight. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Because you can get your name in the paper, for that. And
just showing up.
Yeah. I got my name in the paper the first wrestling match I had against, but yeah, I was like 96 pounds and the weight class was 103.
Oh
and
God.
So I was wrestling guys who were like 10% heavier than I was because they were like 110 or 115 and they would, cut weight down to 103.
Right.
And so they were like, significantly stronger. And that was my first experience with like realizing like how important strength was, because I was in great cardiovascular shape from running, and I was really into running. I was in great shape. But if you aren't strong enough to, even participate for 10 seconds, it doesn't matter how good your endurance is, and there's a reason that there's weight classes, because it's just totally unfair to have like a 100-pound person fighting a 200-pound person. And so I was like, okay, that's important. And then I also just saw how fit, some of these bigger, stronger people were, and like how that just having good cardio wasn't enough. and as a guy, you know, I was not like immune to feeling like I was like a pathetic excuse for a man, you know, as like a 100-pound, you know, guy. You know, I think I first like started like dieting and stuff because I was a little chubby as a 5 foot tall person, you know, like as a lot of like short people are. And, you know, I started, you know, trying to, because I wanted to look tall essentially. So you have to like lean out. And then all of a sudden, like I'm like really skinny. And, you know, and then you're in like lacrosse, like where, you know, you're just getting your ass handed to you, you know, just because you're so small, you know, same with wrestling. So that's what got me into lifting weights. And after my senior year of wrestling, and I was going into college, I was like, man, I don't look like an adult male, you know? And, so I got it like, you know, got like a bodybuilding book, you know, like how to gain mass. It was a Gold's Gym's, mass gainer or something like that. It was like, yeah, it was their text for, like compared to like what Rips put out, it's pretty laughable, but at the same time, like it, you know, it showed you like what exercises to do. Didn't show you how to do them, and it, you know, it wasn't complicated. It was like, you know, do this, and you got to eat a lot, and that type of thing. And of course, I didn't get the eat a lot message, but I
was gonna ask about that because
it took a long time to gain weight, and I definitely think like going to college and just like being in a dining hall. Like I did do a crew for a year, or not a year, a season in college. And I was a coxswain because I was too small to row. That was like my big thing, was like, I'll eventually I'll be big enough and I can be a rower. But at 5'3", I think when I started college, like, you know, you're too short to row because it's like a team sport. Everybody has to be able to do the same, like make it look the same.
Right.
You can't have like one person whose stroke is like this and somebody else's is like that. But just being at the dining hall after practice and whatever, and you're just there for 2 hours or whatever, like just like eating and eating and eating. And I was like on a real like strength training program, with like, it was periodized. It was like probably way too complicated, but it was the first time I'd been on something that was like not something I made up. And so it was like reasonable, and I made a bunch of progress. And I think that year I gained 20 pounds, like in a few months.
Was the hard part about so if you go back and talk about why it was so hard for you to gain weight, now this was before you were in college and able to like basically have the dining hall available to you, you know, all the time. Was it hard to gain weight because you just didn't want to eat as much food? I think, you know, you were small, and being smaller as a wrestler was, you know, good for weight class purposes. But was it hard to gain weight just because was it mentally hard to gain weight for you? Like,
yeah. I mean, and like being alone, like, you know, there's no internet, you know, it's just me and like a couple other people I knew who were really into like lifting. And like one guy gained like 50 pounds or something, like in a couple of years. And I was like, yeah, but he didn't, you know, his abs didn't look very good, you know? And like, so I'm like looking at like I'm like, these guys in the Gold's Gym book, they have abs, you know? So there must be a way to do this without losing your abs, you know? Because that was all I had going for me, was that I was very lean, you know? And like, you know, my girlfriend like would rub her hand on like my abs, and I was like, okay, so this is like all I've got going for me.
And I mean, we haven't talked about this. Rebecca and I haven't talked about this, that we were saving an episode to talk about eating and body image. And I told her, I said, we can't disregard the guys. I mean, because when you think about body image, you typically think about females, right? Women, because of the, magazines, but men go through the same issues too. I mean, they want to be big, you want to be strong, but you don't want to be fat. You don't want to have a gut. You don't want to, you want to see your abs. And so there's this kind of dichotomy. You want to be bigger, but you're reluctant to put that weight on, not realizing that weight, that fat can come off once you're on a good program, you have a good
And
structure.
if you gain 30 pounds and 20 of it's muscle,
right.
Nobody's going to, like, when I came back from college, that first summer, like all the guys that I'd gone to high school with were like, "Oh man, you look good," And, I was like, "Really?" And they're like, I was like, "'Cause I gained like 20 pounds, and they're like, "Yeah, but that's all like lifting weight. That's good." And I was like, "Okay." Like I liked that I was bigger, but I was, I was like, I don't know. That's the other thing is it's so hard because if you've looked a certain way for a long time, like you walk by a reflection or something and you're like, you don't recognize that person because it just looks so different from what you're used to seeing. And
and it even just feels different being in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get all new clothes many times. It's not like you just like get to a certain size and stop growing. Especially as a guy, you just keep getting bigger. And clothes are hard to find that fit right, because like I'm 5'6", and like I have to wear a certain size shirt, but it's oftentimes like way too long, because normally people that like have a chest that big are like taller,
Right.
Yeah, that stuff's annoying, but like and then as a guy, like you feel like, oh, you're not supposed to worry about what you look like.
So wait, that's interesting though. Like, can you unpack that a little bit? Like, why does it seem like as a guy you're not supposed to be
all the
concerned?
stuff I saw in like media, like TV, movies, whatever. The male teenager could not eat enough. Was always hungry, like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. That's like I had a cousin.
He was.
But he was skinny,
Right. Where all the snacking going.
Yeah, I figured that like if you're a guy, you've got like this fast metabolism and you don't worry about what you eat. It's just like, you're just supposed to be like carefree about it,
Right.
And I was not, I wanted to be, really, really wanted to like not care. That was one of the reasons I started like lifting weights, because I was like, I would love like have a normal appetite and not have to like run 6 miles a day just to like be able to eat what a typical person eats. Because at 100 pounds, like you see these girls that are 100 pounds and you're like, oh, why are you only eating salad? It's because like her base like metabolism is like 1,000 calories a day. You don't need to eat that much,
Right.
So it's not fun to go out to eat with your buddies when they can eat like a whole pizza and like I'm like, oh,
yeah, it's funny you say that, because like I remember being in high school and at our church there was a couple and both of them were like well over 6 feet tall, and the thing I used to think all the time was, God, they can just eat whatever they want.
Yes,
they've got so much height to spread that food out over. And I was like that was my thought process.
Right, because it's like 5 feet tall. That's not a thing.
Your perspective changes on people. I never thought about height until I started coaching and weight and what people should weigh, or what I think that they should weigh as for their height, and how, oh my God, you're 6'4", you should be 240. We saw a couple when we were on vacation. We stopped to eat at a place for lunch, and there's a couple that walked in, and they were both about the same height. They were both tall, like 6'1", 6'2". And, Diego and I have this spread at our table, and we're shoving food in our mouths. Like we must have gotten, I don't know how many things on the menu. And I looked over at what they were eating, and they were like a couple sandwich, like a sandwich and like some soup. And I just wanted to walk over and say, why? You have this tall frame, like you could eat so much and you could be so big and so strong. And I'm like, but that's not what they want, maybe. That's not who they are. But I see that. I see people and that's what I want for them. And, you know, and it's not what they want. And so and then as the three of us have gone into, you know,
they don't know that they want
spring
it.
training. Yeah. We know all we want is to be like, you know, bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
You know, but of course there are limits to how and Rebecca and I were talking about this, limits to how I can easily look at somebody and say that, but that may not be their goal per se. So, So talk to us about when you got into college. How did you get into CrossFit? Because I know you were doing CrossFit before we met you.
Okay, so I'm in college. I I lifted weights all through college. It was like one of the only productive things I did. And when I came out of college, I think I weighed 150. So I put on like 50 pounds in college. I'd grown a few inches. Yeah, I was like, 140, something like 140, 150. And then I kept lifting weights. But it was like all that anybody did if you lifted weights, if you went to a gym, was like bodybuilding, a lot of arms, a lot of upper body stuff. I did squats. I definitely trained legs and everything, but I didn't know what like a good squat was for somebody that was like my size. That wasn't like something I worried about. I was worried about, I want to make, it was like a big deal to like bench 185. That was like a big deal to me, but I didn't know what I should be able to squat. And it's just boring. It kind of like the idea of just thinking about your body parts and stuff. It's being sore all the time. And when you train like your body parts like that, like it's real easy to not have like a balanced like look and to not look athletic, and those are things I was like not really into. But no, like 7 years after college, and I was still, I was running and doing all kinds of stuff. Was telling me what like some guys were doing in the military because he had been to Iraq and stuff.
What year?
This was 2007 spring.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, no, the thing that everybody's doing now is CrossFit. So I, went on the website, and this is before it was big, like a few 4 or 5 years before it was big. And I didn't know anybody that was doing it. There were no gyms. And so there was nothing to turn me off about it, which is like, whereas like, as soon as it gets big, it's like, oh God, ugh, you guys are ridiculous, but when nobody was doing it, I was like, okay, this is really cool. It reminded me of like a wrestling workout where light-ish weights, some of the weights were heavy, but it was like, you worked at a pace where you like almost were going to throw up, the whole time.
Sounds fabulous.
And as like an athlete, like
I'm not actually being sarcastic.
Yeah, like when you compare that to like a really hard workout, like like in sports or whatever, that's what those always felt like. It was like that constant like lactic acid. Every like 2 minutes as hard as you can go, and then you rest for a second, and then another, as hard. And I like that it was like movements instead of body parts. So we're gonna push something, we're gonna pull something, that type of thing. And I was like, yeah, this is way more. And at the time, it was all really focused on high intensity. So it was like, you should do this workout. It should take, it's going to take you about 20 minutes, and then you should be done. And it's not going to help you to do more. You just need to do this as hard as you can, and then rest. And then that was good for somebody like me, where like I can get like really overboard with like, oh, but what if I do like 5 of these workouts, And at the time it was like, no, just do this one as hard as you can. Now it's, they're crazy, but
yeah, I think I was going to say, I mean, I don't know too much about CrossFit, but from what I've seen, what I've read, but before it became what it is, now, or, I guess after 2009, right? 2010, 2012, it seemed a lot more, it was I don't say simple, but it just had a very simple look and feel and design to it.
Yeah.
And it was not overplayed. like it is, like it became.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I think when Reebok bought into it or bought it, I don't know how much of it they own. I think like 49%. That definitely changed. But like all the people that you associate with like functional sort of fitness, like Dan John and Mark Twight and all those people they were all in the same club. They all knew each other and were exchanging ideas and stuff back in the early 2000s. Like I think there's a reason that got Ripito as to be part of it, was because his thing was simple and not like crazy complicated. And that was what attracted me to just like how it was simple,
Right.
and it wasn't like too complicated. And he had that whole like aesthetic. This shouldn't be your whole, you guys that are in the gym for every day of the week, you know, like go do something productive, you know, like don't you have a job, you know? And that like made sense to me because I knew that like, you know, working out for 3-4 hours a day, like you're definitely neglecting some part of your life. You're definitely not being of service to other people. Definitely like I feel like I want what I do in the gym to like make me a better person, not like a more selfish person. And like what got me into lifting weights in the first part of it was selfish and like I want to like look a certain way, but another part was like I want to be able to, like I had seen some fights, you know, where I knew I couldn't help, and I just remember being like, there's nothing I can do here. And always feeling like terrible about that, you know, that like I was too scared to help, you know, and but that like I was, that I couldn't help. And then in college once there was a situation where like a friend of mine, we were at his house and this drunk person came and tried to get in the house and they had to like subdue him, you know. At the time I was like, you know, 120 pounds or something. And these were like guys over 200 pounds, you know, and I was like, I can't help here either, you know, and I've been like lifting weights for a long time at this point, and I still feel like as a wrestler, I knew like, dude, you're going to be useless. So, like the situation in middle school, like it wasn't like a big deal. Like nobody really got hurt, but it definitely like left an impression on me. Sure. So the whole thing, like I wanted to be helpful, you know, to be able to, I like that this whole thing was about like, you know, making yourself useful and not like, not just being like, having this thing take up your whole life. Right.
Right. Now let it be.
That's the thing I think about a lot in relation to this. Like you're talking about your motivations getting started and the balance between aesthetics and functionality. And I think that the idea or the pressure that guys feel in our culture to be useful, right? Like men and women have this pressure to appear or look a certain way, to be attractive in their body in a certain way, however that gets defined by whoever's doing that defining. But I think guys have this additional pressure to be useful in a variety of situations, not only like you're describing in terms of being the protector, but also like the, you know, useful around the house, doing like the physical or manual labor chores, like in a way that women, it doesn't mean women can't do those things, but that's not sort of expected by the culture. I'm
listening. I mean, I hear that. And I also was thinking about when Jay was just feeling, you know, useless, like you're feeling of like, I'm helpless, like I'm not big enough, strong enough to help if as needed. I think about as I walk around, as I'm going places, that I hope if I'm ever in a situation where I feel like I need to defend myself, that I will be able to, or at least my presence, how I hold myself in public, maybe shows that I mean, you're not a target. Blanking.
Well, I think for like, I think a lot of like, for all of the three of us, I mean, I don't know that these were like conscious decisions that I made. I think it was just sort of like, there was some sort of like traumatics, and my unconscious was like, oh, you need to try to control things. You need to get stronger, you know, whatever you can do to control, make sure that like these bad things don't happen. And like, yeah, a lot of it is not going to be helpful, you know? And like, I don't even, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's a way, I feel like it's a way of trying to rewrite your own ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, like whatever the situation was that you found yourself in that maybe made you feel like you were not helpful or that you weren't strong enough. And so this is a way of trying to address that and write a different possibility for yourself into the future.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't want that to define my whole life. That whole like, oh, I can't deal with what happened. Mm-hmm. So I have to like spend my whole life become something that I'm not, you know, just because I can't deal with what happened. Because I do feel like a lot of like what you see in the fitness, especially like with Instagram and stuff, the fitness media is like people that have eating disorders and body image disorders and like justifying, like, you know, using that to, I don't want to like have everything I do be about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because I'm not like too skinny doesn't mean that like my whole life isn't like consumed by this stuff, you know?
We'll be back in a couple weeks with part 2 of Jay's interview when he talks about his younger brother, Mickey, how he became a behavioral specialist at Kennedy Krieger, and how his work at Kennedy has shaped his work as a coach at 5x3 Training. Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 Training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.